Our guest today is the Executive Director of the Illinois State Toll Highway Authority. She is responsible for day-to-day management and operation of the 286-mile tollway system. The Illinois Tollway has an annual budget of $998 million and 1,600 employees. Our guest today is in charge of a 15-year, $12 billion capital program, the largest program in the agency's history and the largest of any toll road in the nation. She has a fabulous husband and is a super mom to her young son, James. Ladies and gentlemen, Kristi Lafleur. Kristi.
Thanks, everyone. While we get our Prezi figured out, I would just like to say thank you, Jay, and thank you to the City Club for inviting me to speak to you today again. I would also like to recognize certainly my son, but most importantly my husband, who isn't here today. He had some meetings and he couldn't attend, but I believed him when he said he wanted to, which is important in a marriage. If nothing else, believe it when they tell you something that you want to hear, right? So I really am very humbled to be here today and sincerely grateful for the opportunity to speak to you, but more importantly, for the opportunity that I've been afforded to lead this great organization that is the Illinois Tollway. You know, this is an agency that knows how to get things done, and let's not underestimate the importance of that. And really, that wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for the dedication and talent of some of the people who are here today, not myself, but actually the staff and people who work at the Tollway. So, always their favorite part of my speech, I'd like for them to stand up and be recognized because they do a great job for us. So anybody who works for the Tollway, please stand up. Thank you, thank you. So this is my 5th time speaking at the City Club, not that I'm counting. My 4th time as Executive Director of the Tollway. And, you know, I'll be honest, as I was contemplating what I was going to come here and say to you today, I was wondering if I really had anything new to say to you. And maybe as you all were signing up to come, you wondered that yourselves, frankly. But I thought that I would start out a little differently today and tell a story about a meeting that I had right before I started this job. And it was a meeting with Governor Quinn. So I think every one of us has had a nerve-wracking meeting about a new job, right? Everybody's experienced that. And I was coming into the Tollway to be the first woman executive director, which came with its own set of unique opportunities, shall we say. I like to think of everything as an opportunity. And what I remember most about that meeting, after I walked in to see him in the Thompson Center, was how honest he was, how brazenly honest. And he said, Kristi, the Illinois Tollway has been a place where previous governors put major political supporters in charge. That's been the practice in the past, and I want to change it. I want someone who is going to be there, who's going to run the agency like it should be run, and I want it to be run by you. I want you and the board to restore the public's trust in the Tollway, in the agency so that it can do its job. That's what really matters. And you know, that's a true story. And how do you say no to that when somebody asks you to do that? So 4 years later, here we are, and I look back on what we've learned under the governor's direction, and I think that there are really 3 things that I take away from these last 4 years. Leadership matters, choices matter, and of course, results matter. The Tollway is a different place today than it was 4 years ago. And while there's always room for improvement, and although our mission has remained the same, I do think that our culture is different, and our approach is different. In addition to Governor Quinn setting the stage for us, you know, I think our culture also really comes from our board of directors. I'm very blessed to have a strong, great board. Strong leadership starts at the top, and it needs to permeate an organization. From those who are leaders at our maintenance sites to our division heads and all the way to the board, everyone has a leadership stake and a responsibility in our organization. This is not a rubber stamp board of directors at the Illinois Tollway today. The directors who oversee our agency have honest discussions and open meetings about policies and issues, discuss the future of the organization, weigh the challenges and the decisions that are made, stand tall and lead when times are good and when times are difficult. They lead by doing, by example, and most importantly, they serve as our compass, as any good board should. And at the executive level, I think we've tried hard to empower the agency's leaders, division heads, our chiefs, to step up and take chances. We've really tried to challenge them to think differently and to think about new ways to do their jobs. I think that part of my job as an executive director is to create the space for all these talented people to do a great job at our organization. And the chiefs, in turn, empower staff to take initiative. So hopefully you have this culture bred into the organization of innovation and leadership really throughout the agency. And part of leadership is really making good decisions and then moving forward. Action is important. Decide and act. And not every good, well-reasoned decision is going to work out perfectly. In fact, some are going to fail. And I think that learning from failure is incredibly important, and not being afraid to fail is important. As long as you're doing everything you can to be successful and plan for success, failure is okay. There's a natural risk aversion in government. And, it's natural, and I think that it's appropriate. We are stewards of the public's funds and the public trust, and we should be very thoughtful about risk. But at times, this risk aversion can hold back creativity in government leaders. Because the responsible road is not always the safe road. The creative road is not always the safe road. The innovative road and the forward-thinking road are not always the safe roads. So in order to be a change agent, you have to be willing to take risks. You can't become complacent. You have to keep pushing forward in order to achieve results. That's what the leadership of the Tollway, our board and our management, if I do say so myself, I believe we've done that over the last several years. With courage, hard is not impossible. Today, as a result of those changes, I believe we're thriving. That quote, "With courage, hard is not impossible," is from Governor Quinn's State of the State speech back in 2013. It's his theme. And it really inspired me then, and it still inspires me today. And when I look back at the last 4 years at the Illinois Tollway, it becomes clear to me that a lot of what we've done and accomplished has come down to the choices that we've made along the way. We are really defined by our choices. Choices matter. So let me give you a few examples of a couple of the forks in the road for us as an organization where choices mattered. Once we gained the approval for our capital program, 15-year, $12 billion Move Illinois program, we could have chosen a simpler path forward by packaging our roadway improvement contracts into big $100 million contract packages, all of them packaged the exact same way. It would have been easier for us, that's for sure. Fewer contracts to manage, bigger companies at the helm. It would have been more control for us as well, potentially, or certainly more control over the process. I mean, how many of you in this room are familiar with the government procurement process? How many of you would like to do it more times instead of fewer to get the same result? Not very many. But why did we decide not to host those big contracts? Everyone knows that we didn't do it, and instead, with a very real buy-in from our chief engineer and his team, we chose to dismantle some of what could have been huge contracts, creating more contracts, both large and small. Today, construction and engineering firms of all types and sizes have the opportunity to compete for tollway work and benefit from our capital program, and many of them are here with us today. And let's talk about what that's meant over the last couple of years. More than 200 contracts awarded thus far, nearly 600 different businesses working on the Move Illinois program, with 250 of those working for the Illinois Tollway for the very first time. Think about what that means to the industry and to this region. more companies with contracts. Large companies get to maintain their operations, keep people employed, offer good jobs. Small companies get to grow and thrive and frankly create a bench for future tollway vendors. We love that. A greater shot at success for a greater number of people rather than success for just a select few. Choices matter. Another example is our decision to go a little different direction with our electronic toll and violation collection system. Not something that people get too excited about, let's be honest. But at the time I came in, we were using the same technology that the Illinois Tollway had been using since it opened open road tolling many years before. And frankly, we could have stayed the course. You know, it was working fine, it wasn't great, it wasn't really flexible, but it was okay. We could have easily just decided to keep it and to keep the status quo. But we knew that Governor Quinn and our board had challenged us to improve our customer service. And we were not going to be able to do that with our old system. So instead, we decided to break up that large contract and put it out to bid. And today we have a contract to install the world-class SAP software used by Fortune 500 companies the world over, that they manage millions and billions of client accounts and other activity with, and is going to enable us to do things like smartphone tolling, like message alerts about iPass accounts in real time for customers on their smartphones or other email accounts, you know, dealing with violations online. And of course, is going to also allow us, frankly, to transition more easily to all electronic tolling on some of our new facilities like the Elgin O'Hare Western Access Project 390. We would not have been able to do this if we hadn't made the choice to change. And by the time this new system is live next year, we will be at the forefront of the industry, light years ahead of where many tollways are and where we would have been otherwise. There's a degree of risk in it, there still is, but ultimately, again, it's really about choices. My last example has to do with our work on the Jane Addams project, I-90. I think probably there are a lot of people in this room who are actually working on that project in one way, shape, or form. So the Jane Addams was the oldest part of the tollway system. It hadn't been rebuilt. It was originally built in 1958, and it was really falling apart. We knew that we needed to do something about it in our Move Illinois Capital program. Quite frankly, we could have taken the easy road. We could have just said, we'll just rebuild it and add a lane and be done with it. Quite frankly, in the near term, our customers probably would have been very happy with that. That extra lane would have been just fine with them in the near term. But it would not have addressed the long-term needs of this region. So we took a different approach. On our $2.5 billion Jane Addams reconstruction and widening project, the Tollway is investing $17.5 million in smart technology enhancements on the most congested part of that corridor. So new high-tech gantries with signage that will direct traffic in real time, helping them avoid upcoming incidents or stalled cars. You know, weather stations, cameras, sensors to make sure we understand the roadway conditions at the moment. Bus on shoulder so that we can have transit on that corridor integrated for the first time. These technology enhancements will result to up to 25% more capacity on the most congested part of that corridor. Let me say that again. 25% more capacity from a $17.5 million investment. That's really an amazing number, particularly when you consider that a lane mile of tollway, one lane mile, is about $10 million to build. So our smart technology is enabling us to add a quarter more capacity to the most congested part of the Jane Addams for just pennies on the dollar of what we would have to spend if we were building lanes. By the time we're done rebuilding I-90, 62 miles in 4 years, which is its own accomplishment, as I think we can all attest to, you're not going to recognize it. It's a state-of-the-art, or it will be a state-of-the-art corridor, first of its kind in this region and one of the first of this kind in the nation. It's going to be amazing. So now, I get to come to my favorite part of my remarks, which is, of course, nearing the end, probably your favorite part as well. But also I get to talk about our agency's many accomplishments over the last 4 years. But before I do, I thought I would just touch on a couple of stories that have been in the press recently that I think are very important and I think also help put in context what the next 4 years could be like and what's at stake if we don't continue to build and maintain our infrastructure in this state. You know, the recent coverage of last week's fire at the FAA's radar facility, where one person was able to do enough damage, it will result in hundreds of millions of dollars of negative impact to this country's economy. Air traffic shut down, planes and cargo not able to get to where they're going. And then I've also read stories about manufacturers who are making very real choices, decisions, and major investments to try to work around our nation's crumbling, congested infrastructure. They will manufacture a piece of heavy equipment in one location, and as they try to ship it to the coasts for export, they disassemble it, put it on trucks, ship it out in parts, reassemble it, and export it. All because much of our nation's interstate highway system can't support large trucks and heavy loads. Those are very real investments that our business community is having to bear because our nation hasn't focused on reliability and mobility in the way that we should in our infrastructure. For me, I think these are really incredible examples of how our nation's transportation network is so linked to our economy. There's a high value that needs to be placed, and probably not a high enough value that has been placed on mobility and reliability. So results really do matter. The crisis of how to fund transportation is not going to be solved overnight, but we can learn from these stories about how important it is to solve it. And unlike at the federal level, Illinois has a plan to get things done, to make things happen. We have not sat back waiting for anybody else to come in and fund the transportation and infrastructure needs in our state. We weren't going to sit idle and wait for somebody else to make the tough decisions, because let's be honest, nobody else was going to. What the governor believes, and what I've learned, is that there is no better investment that can be made in our economy than investments in infrastructure. Today, the Illinois Tollway is proud to have the largest capital program in our agency's history and the largest of any toll road agency in the country. And our financial health remains strong. We have AA rated bonds, stable outlook from all three rating agencies. And this past August, our traffic has continued to perform. So in this past August, we had the busiest travel day in our agency's history. Overall, car traffic is up 2.8%. Truck traffic is up a healthy 4.3%. And later this month, we will open phase 1 of the new $719 million 294-57 interchange project, connecting those two interstates on the south side of our city for the very first time. We will also complete and open 37 miles of new and widened roadway on I-90, connecting Elgin to Rockford. We're moving full speed ahead on new projects too. Many of you have seen the progress on the $3.4 billion Elgin O'Hare Western Access Project 390, the largest road building project in the state, and one that's going to open up the west side of the airport for development for the very first time. And we're making a difference in thousands of people's lives by creating jobs and stimulating the economy with these investments. So as we continue on our year 3 of our program, at the Tollway, we actually thought it was a good time to maybe take a step back and assess what is the economic impact of all these investments that we're making. To help us, we asked Economic Development Research Group, or EDR Group, to take a closer look at the impact of the Move Illinois program. EDR Group has worked with public and private entities in the United States and Canada, as well as internationally. They analyzed the direct effects of our program spending over the course of the program, and particularly over these last couple of years, as well as the indirect and induced effects created when job earnings and business purchases happen in an economy, and dollars are earned on construction projects and those workers go and spend in the economy. And their initial findings are very, very promising. EDR Group estimates that nearly 14,000 jobs exist in 2014, men and women working, that would not have had a job were it not for Move Illinois. and that number only grows over time. At the peak of the program, as many as 20,000 people will have a job because of the spending on Move Illinois in any one given year. And those aren't the only benefits. Over the life of the program, Move Illinois spending will ultimately generate around $861 million of state and local tax revenue, new tax revenue. And perhaps most importantly of all these statistics, people connected to the economic activity created by our program will take home $11 billion in wages over the course of the Move Illinois program. But as significant as all of those things is what we will leave behind. Illinois businesses will enjoy the long-term impacts of improved mobility and better access to regional and national markets. And the long-lasting impact of our program will really be, we will leave a state-of-the-art infrastructure for generations to come. So, take a deep breath. 4 years ago, I accepted this job with a mandate from Governor Quinn. And with his vision, with our board's guidance, and with, as importantly, our staff's hard work, I think we've shown that leadership matters. The Tollway has made business decisions over this time that fly in the face of how things have always been done. And I think we've opened, as a result, a floodgate of opportunities and prepared for an innovative future, showing that choices matter. And now I really have to take a deep breath, because next year, you thought this year was big, next year will be the largest year of capital spending in our agency's history. Almost $1.6 billion of capital spending next year. And the impact of all of that activity is going to create jobs, it's going to improve our economy, and it's also going to deliver benefits for generations to come. Because above all else, results matter. Thank you very much.
If you have questions for our speaker, yes, raise your hand. Where are you? There you are. They're back there. If you have a question. Will the people who collect the questions raise their hand so that people can see you? There you go. I feel like I'm running RTA over here. Can I get one of those damn things? All right. By the way, before we go any further, great job, Kristi, as always.
Thank you.
We have one of the great public servants, 40 years here, Terry Gabinski. Where are you, Terry?
Yes.
There he is. A man who knocked it out of the park at former Congressman Rostenkowski's funeral, and Monsignor Vilo still talks about it. It was one of the great moments. So, do we have questions? Not RFPs, questions. Oh, I have a question.
Oh,
Well, someone's got to have a question.
I know, I
mean,
agree. I completely agree.
I love the mountain, by the way, in a state that's famous for its mountains. This is really...
Oh, we have mountains here, Mr. Grade.
No other questions except from me. Okay. Will we ever build enough tollways to satisfy the growing number of drivers? If you can't sandbag your speaker, who else can you sandbag?
Well, you can't build your way out of congestion. We've learned that, right? You would have to add a lane to, every major road in this state every 10 years in order to keep pace with congestion. So that's why I think it's important to build smarter, to make investments like technology investments that leverage more capacity, to think about transit being incorporated into the road. I mean, one of the governor's mandates to us as an agency was to think about how we work with other transportation agencies better so that we can deal with this region's challenges. I mean, Chicago always ranks as one of the most congested cities in the country, and while I do think we're making a lot of the right choices here about investments, you can't imagine that we're ever going to have enough to just keep building roads and keep building roads and keep building roads. We're going to have to build smarter, cooperate more, and that's what I think we're trying to do at the Tollway.
Well, good answer, by the way. Seeing all the, nobody else wants to raise a question, how about a round of applause?